Welcome to The Pathway. Today, Drew continued to take us through the book of James, and we looked at James chapter 4. And could there be a more apropos verse and tone for our current times in 2026? Because we live in a divisive time, whether you're looking on your social media feeds, conversations at work, even around the dinner table. I'm finding in my own family, there's a lot of disagreements on life. And what we see here in James is we see that the news goes from bad to worse to intriguing to really, really good, okay, over the course of these 10 verses. But it starts with kind of a punch in the face, if we're being honest, where he says, where do wars and fights come from among you? And you hear this and you're thinking, yeah, this is where the Bible is going to tell me it's everybody else's fault but mine, right? Because I'm the one with the right perspective. But he says, do they not come from your desires that war in your members? That James is saying, you're the problem. It's like Dr. James is diagnosing what's going on in our world, which is going on in our hearts. And he's saying, hey, it's kind of you. And man, that stings, doesn't it? And it was hard to get through, but it's good news because we need to know what we've been diagnosed with if we're going to find the cure. And he goes on and he lists all of these horrible things that are symptoms of this diagnosis. You know, words like lust and murder and covet and fight and war and adultery and adulteress and gloom and mourning and weeping and sinners and all of these heavy symptoms. And we're starting to think it's really just about these pleasures that we struggle with. And man, can't we relate with the temptations of pleasure? But then it takes this interesting twist to me in verse 6. And this is what I love about the Bible, that God's always trying to help us dig a layer deeper. That it's not just about the pleasures of our eyes and our bellies and our world. In verse 6, he turns it and he says, but he gives more grace. Therefore, he says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. That somehow underneath the desire for pleasure in our life, there's this pride that's being revealed by God, that we need grace for it. We need forgiveness for it, which is interesting to me. But then the news gets really good. And I hope you caught this in the 10 verses today. Because it says in verse 7 that when we submit to God, resist the devil, he will flee. That when we draw near to God, he will draw near to us. That the cure, the cure for this illness that we have, the diagnosis that's not fun to go through is getting closer to the God of the universe, which is readily available to each of us. It makes me think of the old story of the farmer and his wife, okay? And they're driving down their country road in their beaten up pickup truck, and they've been married for 40 years. And Ethel's sitting next to Arthur, and she says, Arthur, do you remember when we started dating back in our teen years, and I would sit right next to you here in this pickup truck, and you couldn't put a piece of notebook paper between us because we were so close, and it was so romantic. We were so in love. What changed, Arthur? And Arthur's driving behind the wheel, and he looks over at Ethel, and he says, Ethel, all I know is I've never moved. And I love that story, that anecdote, because it's a great image of us and God. That there are these times where we begin to feel distant from the God of the universe, distant from our Savior, Jesus, distant from the Spirit that we know lives in us. And God's saying, hey, I've never moved. I've never moved an inch. And in fact, it's like a magnetic force. When you even move an inch towards me, I'm going to move a foot towards you. And for me, that is my great takeaway this week as I listen to James 4, 1 through 10, is that if I'm going to have victory over these temptations, the pleasures of life that cause the infighting and conflict in my life, it's only going to come as I move closer to Jesus. This week, I encourage you to take a step towards Jesus and watch him come running towards you. Have a great week.